Hello and welcome to the Bookish Rambles podcast with me, Holly.
Me, Becky.
And me, Emma Medrano. I am the writer of a book called Venus Flytrap, which is about a young woman at university who develops something of an unhealthy obsession with her flatmate. It can be found wherever most books are found, and I am on social media as emmawroteabook in most places.
Yes. And we're going to talk today. We'll give you, as usual, the warning that this is going to be very spoiler heavy. And also, I'm going to not even give an actual trigger warning list because there's so many.
I believe there's one in the book itself.
Yeah.
So
You are probably best looking that up if you don't already know. But it's a lot. So basically, the first question that I guess I want to ask is about the autism representation in this book. That was one of the things that I didn't know going into it, and then I was reading it and I was like, this girl's autistic. That is one autistic person if I've ever met one before. And I thought it was really, I hate to use this word because it sounds so like stereotypical, but it really was refreshing to see an autism sort of diagnosis that isn't like dumbed down to the like quirky sort of online autism that has become very normal. I think that we've all been on the internet. It's kind of become like people use neurodiverse words to describe things that aren't at all neurodiverse and that kind of make
It's
the
just
actual
a normal human thing.
yeah, and it waters down the real experience, whereas this book, it went like the complete opposite direction of that. It was like autism to the extreme. There was a meltdown scene, like an actual honest meltdown, which was so, and like, okay, I didn't intend to do the spoiler like right from the very beginning, but you know, she ends up on trial, not on trial, but like arrested for murder. And it's her autism that makes her so vulnerable in that situation and that puts her in that situation. And that, you know, she makes a comment herself in the narrative about how if they saw her room in the house, which she had trashed, you know, that was because of a meltdown. It was because of her, essentially, it's like you lose control. It's like when people say like, oh, your vision goes red or whatever, it's like that, but like almost worse. And it, you know, that is one of the things that they're going to use as evidence against her because it's like what is the word? The uncensored version of a disability, which I think especially right now, we had that whole like situation with the BAFTAs and a lot of people not understanding a person who has like Tourette's and how that is like an actual disability and not one that you can control and doesn't represent your beliefs or your you know, your values. And a lot of people were being very hateful about it because it was an uncomfortable moment. And it's like, I think that this book did a really good job for me of showing like autism on like a day-to-day level of like playing a role and fitting in with society, but also the uncomfortable bits, the bits that like I would be personally embarrassed if somebody saw me in that state. And I have been embarrassed when people have seen me in that state. I wanted to talk about it because it felt so realistic, and I didn't know this going in, but it read like it was influenced by your perhaps real life experiences.
yeah, I'm so glad you said all that because that really was a lot of my intention. I have been thinking a lot recently about, I think there's often two kinds of representation that we see of different marginalized groups, which can be disabilities, it can be different ethnicities or LGBTQ identities, where on the one hand we have representation that is, as you said, quite dumbed down and it's written for an audience that doesn't know anything about it. So it's simplified and the person being represented is always, you know, very black and white, a good person because it can't ever be seen as anything other than that. And on the other side, we have representation that is more written for the people of that group to see themselves in, not for someone else to learn about it. So it is more genuine and it goes deeper. And there's nothing wrong with either kind. But I just think there is an overrepresentation of a more simplified kind of representation that is written for an outside audience. So I did want to write something that felt more true to real life, that people could relate to. And I did pour a lot of myself into this book, which that might sound alarming if you actually read the book, but like I'm not that person.
Yeah.
But she does have like a lot of me in her.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that that came through and that the way it's being read is how I intended it to be.
I think that's what you do for any sort of character, because like any time that you think about, because you do use your own experience. So even though the characters aren't you, essentially, you still put your own experiences in. I think because that's just how you see the world, and essentially,
And you learn from
Exactly.
them. Like, I feel like you
yeah.
sometimes you'll write a character who has a specific way of speaking, and then maybe you start using like some of their mannerisms in your own speech because you've been writing it so much and probably like playing out these conversations in your head to see if they sound natural. And I think that that like lends, especially like in the autism conversation with your book specifically, obviously she takes it too far, objectively. But like the whole idea of her like mimicking this person who she loves and admires, I think that like the way that we talk, especially when you're autistic, you take other people's speech patterns and sort of start using them as your own. You maybe copy their body language when they smile or something, and it's not creepy because it really is. Like, I remember once I was like really made aware of the fact that I don't necessarily smile when I'm happy unless I'm trying to make other people aware that I'm happy. And I feel like it's a part of that. It's a part of that like social conditioning and the idea that you have to be palatable to people who aren't autistic. You have to fit in with the neurotypicals, otherwise your life is going to be more difficult and people are going to think that you're weird and creepy. And she does take it too far. Getting a tattoo that somebody else has is it's definitely not something that I would do personally, but I think that it when you really think about it, it makes sense that she would, because as well, she isn't really treated for a very clear tendency to slide into this sort of obsession, because she doesn't take her medication and she doesn't open up to a therapist the way that you're supposed to, in order to actually get treated and sort of helped. And so it makes sense that she would go so far with it and that she would take sort of admiration, and I think it's like mirroring or something. I don't actually know the terms because they always change what everything's called. But it made so much sense, even like at the extreme level. And I felt like, ultimately she's a victim and her disability made her vulnerable to that type of abuse because she didn't understand that she was being lied to. She didn't understand the manipulation. And then by the time that she did, she still felt that like her love was real, she still had those feelings and she believed that she could do something about them and that she could still be like who she thought, because she didn't understand why. She didn't understand that like she had been set up because the person was always going to set her up. She just, she was like a vulnerable, autistic, a disabled person who was made into this really unfortunate victim of so many things. And I feel like it really was nice not just to see like the autistic representation of like the less polished sides of it, the sides that make you not super comfortable to be around for a lot of people, that make a lot of people think that you're the things that make you get bullied basically when you're younger, especially and you're in like school. The parts that people still don't find very appealing about you. It made them normal, but it also showed them as being like an actual, like, you feel sorry for it, but also you understand that it's a system that is built around neurotypical people. It's a system built around people who can understand that, and autistic people inherently aren't built to understand it. And therefore she suffers. I went on a bit of a
Yeah.
ramble there.
No, I agree with all of that. I think, no, I really appreciate your viewpoint because from my point of view as well, the main character, even though she is a horribly messed up person and does a lot of very terrible things, she's not the ultimate villain. Was never intended to be. And a large part of her obsession, which I found very interesting, like writing a story about obsession and a person like this, is figuring out why would someone become like this? Why would someone become so enamored with someone else? And a large part of it is the fact that she feels so different and othered by society her entire life and has wanted so badly to just be able to be someone else. And when she finds someone that she's like, oh, I like this person. I would like to be her.
I will say I feel like I don't know. It's hard to talk about like your own disability. But like I feel like I don't get too obsessed with like people, but like also I do. And I think that's part of why it was so relatable, because like I could see where the boundaries were being crossed, but I also understood what it felt like. And I understand like sometimes, I'm aromantic asexual, so it's never for me like a romantic thing, but I do have certain people who I think I'm like, I wish I could be like that. And again, I think part of that is, intrinsically, autistic people are different and therefore they are other in a lot of ways. And so it sometimes feels like, I wish I could be like this person who seems very effortlessly human and, they seem so comfortable in being a living being. But it was so fascinating to me to sort of pick apart, especially from the way that the narrative was written. I feel like it becomes very obvious, especially when she talks to Henry. You as the reader are able to go, oh yeah, so she is definitely being manipulated. And then the situation where he's dead, and like that she hasn't done it. Like you have like this like feeling that like she hasn't done it, but there is no way that she is going to be believed that she didn't do it. And then you find out, as she finds out, like exactly what's been going on, and that, basically her narrative, it's like unreliable, but it's not that she knows it to be unreliable necessarily. And it really has that, I think, effect of, and again, maybe it's just because I'm autistic and I kind of was putting my own experiences into like the way that I was reading this, but I felt like the narrative did a really good way of showing the sort of ball dropping and like how a mind that is built differently processes like the things that are happening, and how you kind of doubt yourself and other people. And especially with Kat, like she mentions that in the narrative, Louise mentions like that her face, hang on, I literally saved, let me find this, I sent it to a friend of mine because I was like, this image of this text that I'm reading right now, absolutely brilliant, sums it up perfectly. But basically it's where she sort of says that she tries to read her face. Okay, I tried to decipher the expression on her face, but it was so neutral and I'm so autistic.
Oh, I like that quote actually.
I was
It's so
proud of that one.
perfect.
I'm so happy. I'm glad you
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah, that one for me, that was like the moment where I was like, that is the most real, like, I have never felt so much like a communication sort of error in my life like this woman is going through right now. And I get it so much. I get it, and I feel like it just felt so like the communication aspect of it and like the way that the narrative sort of showed her lack of being able to understand. And then when like the things did come out and it was like, well, I don't know what to believe because I'm obsessed with this person and I don't like you, but also the doubt, and then the actual like the definitive moment of knowing for sure that she'd been sort of pulled along a little bit but not really fully understanding it even after that. It just felt so real, and obviously like on a very drastic scale, but like I just think it all ties in really well. And I guess like leading into something that I kind of wanted to talk about as well, because there's so much, but like the class differences between the characters. I feel like when you talk about, for example, a disability that impairs your social understanding, I think that there's also something about like the way that that intersects with class. And Kat is wealthy, like objectively. Obviously, we don't really know that much about her that's like true, shall we say? But she like obviously she gives like the whole bedroom shared sort of flat share situation for free, basically. Like it's literally the least amount of money that she can think of is how much she has to pay for the rent. And I think that there's something about that dynamic when you sort of consider the fact that she's disabled as well. It really makes this like manipulative, the levels that they're standing on so much starker. And I don't know, Becky, you usually you love a class dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just because of like them like, oh yeah, I've just gone off to the Riviera for like for a couple of weeks. No big deal. And going to Barcelona, no big deal.
Yeah. And oh, do you want to come with me? You don't have to pay for anything. Just, you know.
Especially when they actually go to Barcelona and she's like, oh yeah, we could just buy this. Oh yeah, we could just buy that. Like, okay, she's got to think about like all the stuff. Like she can't really buy anything because of the carry-on she's taken because that's how
Yeah.
she saved money. I like that little niche detail.
And
Like it didn't go too much into it. It's the little details that make more sense than like over-explaining, if that makes sense.
yeah. It really did have a quality of like again, the sort of lived experience more than, you know, it wasn't like, oh, poor people and posh people are different. It was like the way in which a friend, for example, says, and you're sure that this is a good idea because, you know, she could just like decide to go somewhere else, you know, she is the one with all the money. Is this a good idea? And then she has that moment while they're in Barcelona and they've had a fight and she realizes like that literally is what it is. And then she's told to like leave the flat as well. And it's, for me, it was like, there's obviously, living through this right now, the job market is so bad. And, you know, it really is so expensive to just live. And to live, as I said, as a disabled person, the intersection of class and like disability and like race and all this stuff, it comes into play because like you need a lot of money to live, but depending on like what social groups you fit into, you're less likely to actually be paid enough. You're less likely to get a job that pays you even half of what you need in a month to sort of survive. And you know, she's being manipulated by this person who understands her weaknesses, shall we say, in different areas, understands that she can be manipulated fairly easily, that all it takes is like a bit of, you know, saying this thing or saying that thing, and she'll basically be in love with her and, you know, not question anything. And furthermore, you know, she can just say, get out of the house, like, you don't live here anymore, if she really needs to. Which means that at like the drop of a hat, you know, she has every bit of power in that situation. I'm just going to bring this up now because I feel like it actually is a really interesting point to bring up at this point. I loved the way that she was like Catherine Parr and that like the realization that she isn't the other Catherine, that she's Catherine Parr, she is the survivor. I loved that like whole naming system like right from the beginning. But then at the like the end when it's like, oh, I had it wrong. That was brilliant. And I think it really showed off because again, like Catherine Parr, you know, she kind of played Henry VIII. Like he was always going to die pretty young because he was health addled. And it just it felt so I don't even like it honestly, that was like a mic drop moment for me. I'm a history lover though, so I was like, ooh.
Yeah, that wasn't even intentional. I did not. I just ended up naming these characters Catherine and Henry, and then at some point during my first draft, I was like, "That's kind of funny. I should turn that into something," and kept adding more and more significance to it, I suppose. Yeah.
I did actually want to know when that came in because that, like, to me, it felt so established right from the beginning, and then at the end there was like the payoff of it. And it works so well, especially with like the idea of the sort of class differences and like the money and how, you know, Catherine Parr, obviously like all of Henry VIII's wives basically had their own kind of power. The power, you know, it came and went depending on which wife. But ultimately like Louise just wasn't anybody in that sort of story, in like that aspect of it. You know, she never put herself in any way into that part of the narrative, and it was just like there was this further distance. And so, you know, she has this relationship with both of them being monarchs in her mind, like she refers to them as such. And it just like it really, I think, to me it was so interesting to watch every time that she would like hide the way that she made money, or the way that, you know, she would go out with somebody, but they weren't, she wasn't interested in them, but then she was interested in these two people that she saw, she named them after like royalty, and then a situation with like her wealth and it being very minimal and her being in the hands of these two people, and neither of them were a good choice. Like neither of them was going to save her from what ended up happening one way or another. You've got one of them who's manipulating her, who frames her for murder, and then amongst other things which are horrible. But then, the other is an abuser. Like, it doesn't, just because he was killed doesn't mean that he wasn't an abuser. And he does harm Louise in the story. Like, it really felt like the sort of tension between the three of them, because they're not the only characters in the story, but it's very clear. Again, the narrative is very sort of good at drawing you into the obsession and of giving you this unreliable sense of what's going on. Not purposefully, but like in the sense that she just doesn't understand everything, and that the sort of power dynamic exists, and she doesn't really think of it as being like something that she's affected by. Like, she thinks that she's choosing to take this role that she has in this story for herself, but really she's just being strung along like everybody else. And it was just brilliant. Like,
Thank you.
I really, it just, honestly, at the time of reading it, it was one of those books that I was reading and I was like, I'll just read one more chapter and then I'll go to bed, I promise.
But I'm so bad at taking compliments. I'm just like trying to fall out of my own skin. But I really appreciate it. Thank you. I'm so glad you liked it.
No, I'm the same. I am the kind of person, if someone compliments my book, I'm like, please don't talk to me for like an
please
hour.
tell me that you love it, but also don't.
Yeah, wait till I'm not face to face with you.
Exactly.
But no, I just thought basically that all of like the little elements like that, they came together really well. And I guess, shall we talk about like the obsession? Shall we like go in depth on this? Because there's a lot that happened in this. I will be on, like, there was like one specific bit that I cannot stop thinking about, and it's like the only part of this story that made me feel like a little queasy, because I'm one of those people. I have a pretty strong stomach for like violence and stuff, but then there's like a certain type of violence that I just really hate. And I think, Becky, we've talked about this before. Animals getting harmed.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry about that. I'm so sorry.
It was so like,
it's very subtle.
Yeah. The way that she doesn't realise at first, and you know that something's off, like right from the beginning, and she thinks that it's just because she's upset that, she's not killed this person that she said she was going to kill. And so you kind of get like a sense that like Kat is done with her. She has used her as much as she can, but you don't really know yet how, like, you have an idea, but you don't really understand it, right? Because like, obviously she doesn't question it. Like, Louise doesn't think that it's weird that having creeped out, and I did that in air quotes. I'm really bad at using air quotes when nobody can ever see them. But like, Louise literally thinks that like, Kat's been like freaked out by the fact that she's seen that she's like copied her in so many ways, and that she's like, oh, we're done. We're not talking to each other. And we're not probably living together anymore. And then in an instant, she says, I think we should kill him. And all of a sudden, they're back being closer than ever. To her, it doesn't seem weird. But as a reader, you're like, that's interesting. A totally normal reaction to find out that somebody's copied you so extremely and is like becoming you. And then you suddenly like them when they say that they're going to do this like thing for you. It like the alarm bells are going off, but you don't really understand even at that point how severe this person is. You just don't get it. And she then has this moment of realization, and it's like you feel so heartbroken for her, because they have like a pretty big part in the story. And like she like eats one of them at least.
Did she cook it for her? That's what I think. Yeah, I thought that was kind of implied, which is, oh my god.
It's like, it's horrifying. And it's like, it's not just like abuse, it's not just manipulation, it's like, she takes it as if it's like a normal punishment. She's like, well, I deserved it.
Psychotic.
I understand why you did that. And I'm like, no, babe, no, get out of there. Run, please. Please get help.
I think at that point her whole worldview is just so warped and so far from reality that what any reader can see is just completely doesn't make sense to her.
Yeah.
Because she wants something so badly that she will just make it happen in her mind, no matter what.
The red flags are blue, you know?
Exactly, yeah.
Because it's especially like, this comes after she's had a conversation where she's been told the truth. And to be fair, okay, like, the whole situation with Henry is very, very complicated. And obviously, you know, a broken clock is right twice a day. He's not wrong about what he says entirely, but also he is still very messed up. And so, like, obviously, it's not right for him to nearly sort of kill her just because she, like, stands up to him and is like, I mean, she went there to kill him, so fair enough. He does clock the situation. He's like, you're here because she sent you, aren't you? It's all very convenient, he knows that, but then he understands the manipulation. But even so, like, he's wrong about, like, it being justified, him being physically abusive and controlling towards his girlfriend, just because she is also a psychotic person. Like, I think that is one of the things that makes it harder for her to see it, is that, like, he pins the blame on this person who she's idolizing at this point. And so she isn't willing to see it. And then, you know, she goes through this really awful thing and she does experience it. Like, she is, like, it's mentioned in, like, the end that even, like, in, like, the days where she's in the prison, she feels their bodies in her teeth because she ate them and she loved them. It's, like, it's horrifying. It's, like, literally, I can't express how awful. I was, like, I was in silence reading that. I was like, oh my God. It just was awful, but she doesn't see it. And she doesn't see it, and she doesn't really grasp the situation, even though she, you know, if she was anybody else in the world, would be able to understand that, like, hey, that's not okay. It wasn't okay for him to be abusive towards his girlfriend. It's not okay for her to punish you by cooking alive your pet, probably, and, like, feeding them to you. That's not okay. I'm pretty sure that's even classed as poison in some places. Like,
probably, yeah.
It was like one of those moments of, like, extreme clarity as a sort of reader where you really see, like, the difference between your brain being able to understand reality and her brain being too far gone and in need of help that she just isn't gonna get, because realistically people just, they don't get help when they're in that mental state. I think that we've seen that a lot on the internet. There was that whole person who fell in love with their therapist and then believed that the therapist was abusing them. And she still, to this day, she still believes that right now. She's not been disillusioned by that yet. And it's like, that's like one of the most prolific examples of, like, psychosis that we've had in sort of recent history. And I just feel like because that, like, sort of information is, like, in the, you know, memory bank of your brain, you know that she's really not gonna get the help, and you especially know that because she herself fakes being healthy in order to get people to stop bothering her with their help. It's just a very messy situation, but I felt like the last, like, 50 or so pages, I want to say, I can't remember the exact number, but that was, like, an insane ride. That was, like, exactly what you'd expect from a book with that cover and title. Speechless, honestly, about it.
But yeah, I was really just throwing things at the wall, trying to make it as unhinged as possible. So
I think
I'm
worked.
glad I succeeded. Yeah. And I think there's an added layer to, obviously you mentioned people in that state won't get help in most cases. But I think we also have to get consideration to, in a lot of countries, like the UK, it's not very easy to get mental health support either.
Yeah.
You can face tremendous waiting lists. And in Louise's case, perhaps someone could have clocked what was happening at an earlier stage. But she has, you know, counselor at university who isn't really versed in autism or very specialized in anything too severe. And so no one around her understands what's happening.
Because it does start very, this is the thing, right? She shuts her mum out, and her mum would notice immediately, basically, that something was wrong in an ideal world. But, you know, like her friend, who she is like super close with and sees all the time, even he doesn't really see it. And by the time that he does, it's not good, because she is like pushing against anyone who kind of, which is a very realistic thing. We've spoken about this actually on the podcast before with other books that have done like a similar sort of thing of representing the way in which like a sort of mental health struggle can make you not very good to the people that are very good to you. And I just think it's like really, it's like how she changes her dissertation topic, you know, on a whim, basically, really late into it. And nobody really stops her from doing that and says, okay, but why are you changing it? Give us a real reason why you want to do this. Like, what is it that's made you so... Like, nobody asks her about that. Nobody asks her why it is that, you know, this job that she's taken pretty seriously, this, like, sugar daddy job, basically, is suddenly something that she's barely putting any effort into, even though she needs the money. Nobody asks her, you know, anything about the fact that she, like, is so obviously turning into a sort of copy of her roommate. Like, nobody really asks the questions. And again, I think this is like, it's all part of like the autism thing of like, people are uncomfortable when they're faced with the harder parts of like being disabled. You know, it's all well and good to support somebody and be like, yay, mental health. But then when somebody actually struggles with their mental health, people feel weird bringing it up, and they feel weird sort of stopping you and just being like, look, I am genuinely concerned for you. Or even like calling like the hospital, because obviously that's very drastic and it's not a good experience, and she already had an experience like that. But there comes a point where like you just need to get someone to step in. Nobody does this for her, and it's so sad, because like it literally is like a tragedy, like a Shakespearean tragedy that is unfolding, where you watch her make all of these bad decisions and you watch her push away these people who would actually help her in this situation. And then next thing you know, she's in prison because they think that she killed someone and they have evidence that she did it, and nobody believes that she didn't do it. Even the people who really love her. You know, they don't blame her for it necessarily because they think that she just needs help, but they do believe that she did it. And it's like, how heartbreaking that is. It's interesting, I think, to have like, because it's basically a thriller, right? I never check genres. I'm really bad.
I think it's basically published as general fiction, but it does have a thriller vibe.
Yeah, it's got that sort of like the building tension that sort of pays off with a bang. But it also feels very sad, and like in a very reasonable sort of way, where, you know, again, it's like you said, like she is not like the best person ever. She has a lot of things that objectively she shouldn't have done and that are like bad actions, but she is a human being who was weak in certain ways, and those weaknesses were exploited, and it made her health worse, and it made her life so much worse than it ever had to be. And especially when you think about the fact that she like undeniably is going to go to a prison of some kind. It really just feels so difficult, because it's not a satisfactory ending, but also like it is a good ending. I don't know how.
It's open-ended.
Yeah. It's one of those where you simultaneously wish that you could like get closure, but also she isn't gonna get the closure. And it's
You're
like,
not going to get the closure.
and it's purposeful, and it's like, it's great that it's like that, but also you just sort of sit there afterwards with like an empty pit in your chest. It just honestly, I feel like the way that the obsession is, and the way that her sort of mental decline is sort of entwined with that obsession, it's just fascinating, and it pays off really well. Like, I feel like, as I said, those last like 50 or so pages, insane. In the best way.
Thank you.
Becky, because you like, again, you like sort of gothic-y horror stuff.
Yeah, I have Well, I've got a list of questions that I was like, just thinking because I was like trying to make them. So it's like, what initially? Okay, so what initially? Wow, I can speak. What initially? I can't get it out.
Where did the idea
What
come
made you?
from?
Yeah, yeah. That's what I'm trying to say, and I can't say it for some reason. Yeah. What did you come up with the idea of like someone being obsessed with a roommate, and like where did that kind of idea come from?
I actually just I want to add on to this because I wanted to know like how much of it was like fully formed at the beginning versus how much of it came later. Like how shall we say
Yeah.
sane was the story to begin with versus the end.
I barely remember now how the idea came to me. I think it started off as just like, what if what if three people had a threesome and it went terribly wrong? Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah.
On okay. I wasn't sure if it was gonna be like marked explicit by Spotify or something. Yeah,
Oh, we
what
don't
if
care
these
about that.
people okay, good. What if these people had a threesome together and it all went terribly wrong afterwards? And
That's
it just sort of went from there. I started off, I don't really plot my books very much. I started off with just a list of this is the characters I'm including, and these are some of the things I think are going to happen. And I just started writing.
that's so like I'm gonna say this now just for sort of context. This is like one of those books that for me it's currently a 4 star, but it's gonna realistically become a 5 star. I have a system. I have to
Okay.
wait a year before I give a book a 5 star. But
I really like that.
um, it for me is like one of those books where I'm like, I don't even doubt that this is going to be one of the best books of the year. And to hear that you like went into it with like ideas, it's one of those like moments of awe for me because it really feels like, and that's why I wanted to know how much of it was formed because I feel like there were so many different areas that I thought, well, this could have been the initial idea, or this could have been the initial idea, and it could have been built around this scene or this scene. Kind of crazy to learn that it was the threesome that was like, I'm gonna be honest, oh, I don't, I wasn't expecting that one. I think I had like a note. Um, I thought it might have been, that is crazy though. Because we've spoken about where we get ideas before, haven't we? I think. Is that something we've
Yeah,
done?
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I can't remember. I've spoken that many times. I don't know.
But I find it really fascinating to learn stuff like that because and I'm sure as a writer yourself, obviously, you probably are just as nosy about other people's novel ideas, but like I made a video talking about how to come up with ideas and how to like turn an idea into an actual novel. And it's just one of those things where I think that a lot of people, they do it in different ways. Like some people, they think of like a big plot moment. Some people, they think of a character and then they build a story around that. And it just is so fascinating to me. Because as well, like The Grapes of Wrath, for example, which is one of my favorite books, that, you know, the idea about that was like he wanted to write a book about this family who migrated because of the depression. And then everything that happened along the way, he basically made it up as he went along with like a few checkpoints, like you said. I cannot write a book like that. I end up doing that anyway because I'm really bad at following an outline, but like I feel like it's I don't know. I can't do that myself. And it's so fascinating to learn that you kind of, because that's like in the middle, isn't it? I don't know the page number. Oh, I'm so bad with remembering where in a book it was, but the threesome happens like sort of in the middle-ish, I think.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. It's quite a bit in. Yeah.
So it must have been like crazy to finally get there when you were writing it.
Yeah, it's really interesting you would say that because I'm the opposite. I'm so bad at outlining.
It's a horrible
I
thing to do, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just get stuck staring at it for weeks, being like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what this character is going to do. I don't know what I want the plot points to be. But if I start writing, then it just all comes together. And then at some point, when I'm like halfway through, I will start being like, okay, now I know the rest of the story. And I'm like, right out, like in this chapter, this is going to happen. And then this in the next chapter. But I just have to start writing and getting to know the character and see things happen. And I'm like, oh, I didn't plan to do that, but I guess my fingers had an idea.
It's kind of great when that happens, though. That's like the best feeling.
Yeah.
I will say the last book that I wrote, which I finished like the end of February, that was like the same with me, where I literally like I sat down and I didn't even intend to finish it. I just wrote like 4,500 words and I just finished the book because I was like the words were just coming out. And it's kind of great when you haven't got like a super solid plan and that happens, because you feel like you're not an idiot who's not planned a book. But I'm saying that as somebody who's still got 2 chapters left to plan of my next book, because I've literally for the past week been avoiding that outline because it is really awful.
Yeah, good luck. That is really impressive, though. Congratulations on finishing.
Thank
I could
you.
not do 4,000 words in one day. My
See,
brain would melt.
I usually can't either, but the last 2 days of writing, it was just one of those like the stars align type thing where I was just
Mm.
like, I can write this book. I know exactly what I'm doing.
Wow.
And it went crazy. But I think it's really fun to hear that you wing it, shall we say. I love that.
Yeah.
It
Yeah, I don't know
definitely,
what I'm doing.
it makes me feel better because I feel like there are some writers who follow their outlines exactly, and I don't do that. So I always love when people write books that I absolutely adore and they don't have an outline, because it makes me feel like I could do that. Oh, I wanted to talk about that actually, because we're at the 50-minute mark. There's literally so much to say that I've got thingies, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the publishing process.
Oh, I've got literally that on my question list.
Because, okay, you made a TikTok, and it was the TikTok that I found you from. And you talked about your publishing journey and specifically about your experience of basically your book not being sort of championed by the publishing company, um, as much as it could have been, about them not really having as much faith in you as they could have. And I wanted to talk about that because, like, specifically, I will say that as somebody who, I'm not agented, but I am going TradPub way, with a few of my books at least. And Becky and I are part of a writing group. It's called Novelbound, and it's founded by writers for writers, basically. And so, as a part of that group, I found out very quickly that, like, getting an agent didn't always mean that you were going to get your book published, and that sometimes your book would die on submission and then your agent would drop you because they didn't have faith in you, they just had faith in this one book that you wrote. Or the market changes and then they drop you because of that, or whatever. And I think that it's not that that's like uncommon, but it still felt kind of revolutionary to me to actually hear people talking about how common that was. And then your TikTok that I saw, it was an instant follow for me, because I was just like, I have never seen a published author talk about the actual like trouble that they have had with the publishing industry, because it really is like, you know, a lot of people think that, you know, you get a book deal and like that's it, you're set for life. You know, you're like the next best author, everybody's in love with you, you're a New York Times bestseller, whatever. But like, I literally don't even know the statistic. The majority of authors who get published by even like the biggest publishing houses, they don't get any promotion. They have to do all of the work themselves. And then if the book doesn't sell as well as they expect it to, which it literally, again, they are not doing any work to promote your book for you. And if it doesn't sell, they think that it's because of your work and not because of the things that they didn't do for you. And it's like, that's such a, like, I want to do TradPub because I do think that there's a lot of stuff that's good about it, that especially right now is stuff that I want to get from it. But it just is so...
Sorry, I've just been interrupted.
Sorry. To me, it's like, it's so, it's such an elusive industry. And I think, you know, authors who are hopeful authors, you know, they hope to get an agent and they hope to get published. It's very easy for you to find lots of people getting book deals and getting, you know, loads of success that they talk about. And it really isn't like the most common route that people go down. And I guess I wanted to talk to you about that because, like, it must be really difficult to sort of talk about it and be vulnerable when there are so few people talking about it. But as somebody who may end up going through that one day, it really gives me, especially because, as I said, I really loved this book. I thought it was great. So it really shows that like this industry, it's not always about the writer, it's not always about the quality of the work or the enjoyability. It's just like the industry, and you've actually lived through that, the downside, shall we say.
Yeah, I have so many feelings about the publishing industry, and I really do enjoy sharing that online, and I try to not be too negative, or make people feel too pessimistic, but I also think it's important to be realistic, and I think it's important for other writers to see what the reality is for like 99% of us, because usually you only see like the really big success stories, like people get a good book deal and the book becomes a bestseller. And so you go into it thinking, that's how it works. If I get an agent, I'm going to get this good book deal and it's going to be enough money for me to live off. And then my book is going to do well. I'm going to write another one that's also going to do well. And you just think that once you get that book deal, you've achieved what you always wanted to achieve. And the reality is very far from that. And I don't want to trash my publisher, because I love my editor. Everyone I've worked with at my publishers has been lovely and incredible. And it's not my publisher's fault. It's an industry-wide issue, no matter which publisher you end up with, because the reality is just that there are hundreds of books being published every single day, and they don't have the money or the resources to market all of those books. So they sort of have to allocate it based on, sometimes just luck or personal preference or what they think they're going to be able to sell. And some books do very well with very little marketing support. They might just end up going viral or end up being lucky in some way and don't need a lot of that help. And unfortunately, that just didn't happen to me. So my books haven't done very well, but I'm very happy that they are out there, and I'm going to keep trying to get more of them out there.
Yeah,
Um,
because that's the thing, right? It's numbers. It's like you think about how many promotions you do get for books. If you got more, you probably wouldn't even see them because there'd just be so many. And I guess that's the thing, right? Is that TradPub, it's got a lot of ups, it's got a lot of downs, and you kind of have to. We've talked a lot on the podcast. Becky self-published her debut last year, and we've spoken a lot about it from both sides of the spectrum. The TradPub industry it's very good in a lot of ways, but it's also very bad in a lot of others. And it is, as you said, it's built into the system. It's not like the fault of any one person. It's just like this is a thing that exists, and it isn't great. But I think it is, like, it made a mark on me, that post that you made, because I feel like I haven't seen any author TradPub before who has been open about that and been open about having these books that didn't do as well as they wanted them to, and therefore, you're not starting from scratch, but you are back where a lot of people don't expect to be back after you've published a book. And I follow other people as well, other authors. Actually, the book that I'm currently reading is a book by an author who, her books aren't like, I wouldn't say that she's the most successful writer by any means. I know about her from TikTok, and so to me, she's like a micro celebrity. But I feel like, most people, they wouldn't have any idea who I was talking about if I was to say that I was reading her book. And, she just got a book deal after like years of publishing books with other people with HarperCollins. And it's like, it really can take some time. And I'm going to bring in a sort of analogy. It's like the Sabrina Carpenter situation, where Sabrina Carpenter got really popular off of Short and Sweet, but it's literally like her 6th album that she's made. And so many people just don't even know that she had that many albums before that really famous one, because sometimes that's just the way that it is in like industries like this, where there's so much talent, shall we say, so many people.
There's a saying, it goes 10 years to become an overnight success.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
That's exactly it. And that is kind of what I think with the writing journey, is that for some people, you absolutely could have your debut be like a best-selling, sold out everywhere, multi-translations of so many countries and stuff like that. But especially for like the literary space, it feels a little bit like you kind of have to grind. And I think it's really nice, as somebody who's currently writing in the literary space, that, especially because like I'm literally querying right now, and I'm getting a lot of no responses or rejections and stuff like that. And that's normal. And it's nice to be reminded that it really is normal and that it really isn't an indication of the quality of your work at all. You know, just because people don't think that this book necessarily will sell or that they could sell it, it doesn't. I don't know. I just thought, as like an author in attempting that sort of career situation, you know, for myself, it really, like, for me, that was the first sort of impression that I had of you, and it felt so vulnerable, but in like a really inspiring way of like the strength of perseverance. And especially having read your book, having found you through that TikTok, I feel like it just has further solidified for me that sometimes, you know, things happen and you just have to pick up and keep going, because you deserve to see what happens when you succeed, is I think the thing that somebody said at one point in time. I can't remember who said that. I swear that's
No,
like a quote.
no, it is very true. You need to be very persistent in this industry. And yeah, I'm glad that left an impression on you. Like I said, I do try to talk about it because I don't feel like a lot of people do, like you mentioned. And I understand why. If your book isn't doing very well, no one's usually going to post about that. So what you see online is always people celebrating their successes. And it ends up being a very small percentage of people. But in your perception, because it's the only thing you see, you think that that's the majority. And so if that doesn't happen to you, you think something's wrong with you. When the reality is that most books, even the traditionally published ones, don't sell more than a few hundred copies. And most authors who get published never manage to make it full time. Which isn't to say that you should stop trying to achieve that if it's what you want. I certainly haven't, but it's just nice, I think, for people to know. And I would have liked other people to tell me this as well, that, you know, if it doesn't happen as quickly for you as you wanted it to, and if it doesn't happen for you in the same way you see it for everyone else, then that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. They're just outliers. They got lucky, or they were in the right place at the right time, or all the stars aligned in a particular way that they didn't for you. And it's just not personal.
It was really, I don't know if it is just because I'm in the querying trenches, or if it's because I sometimes feel really insecure about my writing, which is so stupid because like people are always so nice. But like it just really did stick with me and sort of make me feel like, you know, if that happened to me, it wouldn't be a failure. It would be an additional obstacle in the way of the success that was waiting, shall we say. I did really appreciate that. And I also just wanted to ask about the writing of a novel when you, because I'm assuming that you got a 2-book deal.
No, I got a 1 book deal for my debut. And then before that one came out, I also got a second deal for Venus Flytrap.
So I wanted to ask, did you know, like when you were writing it, did you think that it was gonna be public? Like, was it different from writing like a novel to get an agent, for example?
I didn't know it was going to get published, but at the time, I obviously had an agent, so I felt fairly confident. At least there was someone on my side who would be working for me and helping me achieve that. And my editor, who bought my debut, is fantastic, is a great champion of my work and really enjoyed my writing. So I sort of knew she would be wanting to buy it most likely. And she's not the only one who decides those things, but I figured she'd probably be able to make it happen. So I did write it kind of with the knowledge that it would probably be out there, and it does make you feel a bit more nervous, I suppose, that people are actually going to see it, especially when you write something very personal. And I've always written with the sort of goal that I would be able to get this book published.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that big of a change, but at least, you know, when it feels more certain, it makes you feel a bit more scared of like, oh, what are they going to think when they get to this part? What are they going to sort of believe about me based on what I've written?
Yeah, especially with this book, I can imagine that would be a big concern going in. It's funny because I made a TikTok about people when they've read my book and they're like, what is this? What's in that brain of yours, Holly? Why did you write that? It is a
Yeah.
very valid concern, I think.
Well, I'm glad you've had me on so that you and everyone who listens can know that I'm fairly normal.
Yeah. I never doubted that. I think that sometimes there's just like we do love a bit of a sort of creepy like story. I think the first ever episode that we did was The Lamb by Lucy Rose.
Oh, that's such a good book.
Yeah. I just knew that you would know exactly what it
Yeah, of
seemed
course
like
I
a you
would.
book. But
Mhm.
yeah. I find that kind of interesting because like I don't know. I think that there is a part of me that like the idea of sharing my work with people, it still makes me feel a little bit ill.
Mhm.
And I worry sometimes that like if I was to get a book deal, for example, that I would become a different writer. So I was curious about that. Becky, did you have a question? I don't want to.
It's okay.
I have so many. So
I know. I think we've gone over the hour mark as well, haven't we?
yeah.
So we have to wrap this up as well. Um, so yeah, I think just going back to, like writing about people being, because obviously none of the characters are necessarily redeemable. Like they're all complicated, but yeah, was it kind of difficult writing people who are just, you wouldn't really root for the protagonist, for example, because I know a lot of people would like a book where they want to root for the protagonist. And in this book, like it's
In the
just
hair
like,
like that.
yeah, you're like, ooh, you're a bit weird. Why are you sniffing her underwear? Um, so yeah, was that kind of difficult to kind of sit down and write something like that?
I don't think so. I thought it was a lot of fun. Really terrible people, and I did have it at the back of my mind that this isn't going to be the book for everyone, because some people, like you said, they want to be able to like the protagonist and the main characters, and if someone does something bad, they're like, oh, I can't read this book anymore. I can't like any of them. Um, but it was fun. I enjoy characters that are just terrible, but you like them anyway, as characters, not as people.
Mm.
Uh,
Mm.
so it's just fun to let them do whatever they wanted to do, and I would just write it down and judge them from my laptop.
It's quite fun, I will say. Writing like slightly deranged people. It's something I really love doing and I really love reading. We talked about The
Mm.
Bell Jar, that's one of my favourite books, and it's not like she's deranged in like the sense that you would imagine, like, for example, off of this book. But I really do I think that there's something special about books where the main character is clearly not well. It's just like
Well, I think especially when it's a female character, it's very
yes.
sort of freeing to just watch a woman on screen or read a woman in a book who is just completely unhinged.
It's like the female
Because we don't
rage.
we don't really get to do that. So it's nice to be able to see someone do it, even if it's fictional.
Yeah.
Mm.
Because I think as well, there's something to be said about, again, the connection to what I was talking about earlier with like the meltdowns. It's like female rage, but like it's like the messy kind that a lot of people don't show. Like a lot of people like a clean female rage.
Mhm.
This is like the realistic, like the overstimulated, trying to get your hair done to look semi decent, to go out and hang out with people at a place that's probably going to be too loud, too crowded, and just having like a mini meltdown in your room and having like just like the worst like mood hangover basically for like the next day after you've just, it's the kind of thing that people tend not to talk about because it's like embarrassing or it's unclean, it's not the sort of sanitized version of the mental health stuff. But we got like 3 different characters, all of whom are clearly not great in their sort of mental possessions, all in very different ways. And they all, it's just so, it's like, I saw a comment that you posted that you had of like one of your favorite reviews where it was like a car crash, but you can't look away. That was so
Yeah.
real.
I
That is
love that review
exactly
so much.
like it literally was like watching so many things go wrong all at once and knowing exactly what was going wrong, but not being able to stop it and then having to sort of come to terms with that. Actually, there was also more stuff going wrong that you didn't know about. But yeah, I think that's pretty it probably was like the funnest experience to write. Like, it sounds like it would be great. And I had one more question. What was it? Just before we end. Oh, speaking of the writing process, what is, if, and you can say as much or as little as you want, but what is like your next or current writing project? Whether that's like the book that you're querying or the book that you have like an idea for. What can people expect to see of you in the future?
Oh God, I have no idea because I have, well, since Venus Flytrap came out, my agent and I parted ways. So I am querying again, and I've written several books since Venus Flytrap, and I've all thought all of them were going to be the one to get published. So I don't know what you can expect to see from me next, but I am currently querying a horror historical fiction, which is also about sort of a terrible female main character she's a fake medium in Victorian London who finds out that actually ghosts are real and she's a real medium, and there's a murder that she has to solve as well.
It's just, I love books about, I'm going to say psychics because I think that encompasses the whole profession. Don't know what to say. I'm really bad at talking about it. Which is, I have like
Probably, yeah.
a deck of tarot cards, but I love books where that sort of stuff is discussed because I feel like there's so many different routes that it can go down, and it's always so fun. Yeah. Anyway,
Well, hopefully you will see that in bookshops at some point in the future.
yes. And if not, not if not, that's not what I meant to say. I meant to say for the time being. What was I? Oh my God, I had like, I'm gonna do that over. Right now, you can buy both of your books. This Flytrap is the one that we discussed today. I would recommend it if you have listened to this whole like discussion and you've not read it. I still feel like there's surprisingly a lot that we haven't actually spoiled. As insane as that probably sounds when you think about how much we have said, I literally had like 5 questions that I just haven't even touched on because there was just so much to say. But yeah, they're available. You can get them, as you said, everywhere. Follow all of us, please, on social media. And thank you. This was a fun discussion. And again, this is the first time that we've had a Trad Pub author on the podcast. So this is like a milestone for us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am very self-centered, so I love talking about my writing. I really appreciate being here.
It was great. Becky,
Yeah.
did you have any closing remarks?
No, I think that's everything that I can think of because my brain's kind of
Fried.
clocks out. I can't think of anything right now.
Yeah, we went a little bit over, so we're sorry about that. But it was really fun.
Okay.
And it was great. Hopefully in the future we'll be able to talk about your brand new book on shelves.
I would love to be back. Yeah, thank you very much.
But yeah, everybody go follow, go read if you haven't, which you should have already. But okay, I see you and bye.
Hi.
Bye.